I've reached a part of The Courage to Heal that talks about healing difficulties related to your adult sex life. Some of it I'm just going to really roughly summarize, and some of it I'm going to actually read passages. So a summarizing bit. Part of it talks about how a common response to the trauma is struggling with receiving pleasure. And it says that when that is your struggle, that sometimes working on pleasure independently rather than with another person can be helpful, because a lot of times intimacy with another person will have additional challenges. You can kind of just work on one thing at a time, or at least fewer things at a time, if some of those issues show up with self-pleasure as well. It says that sometimes when working heavily on healing your CSA, or if you are somebody who had repressed memories and then has remembered them for the first time, it may be beneficial to be celibate for a while, to take a break from sex. And a big part of the goal with that might be to realize that it's okay to be celibate for a while, that it's okay to say no to your partner's interests. And for some people, they basically have internalized that their value just as a person in general, or perhaps within a romantic relationship, is exclusively, or at least primarily, sexual. So taking time where you take a break from that can allow you to focus on the other aspects of your relationship that still have all kinds of meaning. And it specifically emphasizes that learning to say no when you specifically don't want it or are not in the mood is really critical. For a lot of victims, they learned basically from their trauma that it's not safe to say no, or that they're not allowed to say no, that they don't have a right to say no, and that is a really, really critical thing to heal. A line that I thought was really powerful, this was in a section related to exploring your body independently. It says, "Who has more right to your body than you?" And I think it makes sense that a lot of victims may have internalized that other people do have more of a right to their body than they do. It says that when trying to work on self-pleasure, that focusing on sensation, trying to be embodied, trying to work on grounding yourself, if you start to notice yourself dissociating or being triggered in any way, is kind of the slow but steady path towards making that slowly feel safer. But also the benefit is learning your own body better, which can just benefit you for future self-pleasure experiences, but also can, of course, carry into intimacy with another person. It suggests that if you have performance anxiety or any specific triggers related to, I'll say, release, like the peak, that sometimes intentionally taking that off the table can make things feel safer, and also can make it easier to kind of enjoy the build-up or the experience and not be so end focused. If and when you are ready to be intimate with another person, suggest making a list of things that you would like to change/heal about your sexuality. It says in one column, list the reasons you want to change for yourself, and in another, the reasons that you want to change for your lover's sake. It's often hard for survivors to separate their own needs and desires from those of others, yet it is essential for you to have your own reasons for beginning to make love. These reasons might be, I feel that I'm missing out on an important part of life, or I want to feel pleasure, or I don't want my past to rule me anymore, or I want to experience an intimate sexual relationship. It says lasting changes are made only when we have a deep desire to change within ourselves. At first, you may be motivated by acute awareness of your lover's impatience or your fear of losing the relationship, but eventually you must come to see sexual healing as something you're doing for yourself. If you force yourself to be sexual before you're actually ready, it's likely you'll experience struggle and disappointment, but little growth. It encourages lots and lots and lots of communication. So you want to be sharing anytime that you are scared, anytime you start to dissociate, Anytime you have physical or emotional discomfort, basically lots and lots of communication is the goal. And for some people, this may feel like it can take away from sexual experiences, but in reality, in the long run, it is the way to find your way to having intimacy that works really well for both of you. If you experience flashbacks during sex or fear that you might, it suggests making a code word that you can use to let your partner know that you have started having a flashback. It used the example of ghosts to kind of symbolize like something from the past is coming up. Of course, then you would pause. Explains that some people who are recovering previously repressed memories may want to stay with the flashback so that they can like gain memory details they may have missed, but other people may want to be taken out of the flashback as soon as possible, and so you might have your partner help you with grounding, whatever is soothing to you. It talks about how a lot of times survivors have kind of gotten formulaic with sex or are kind of rigid about what like counts as sex, and so the trauma can impact other areas of intimacy as well. And so it encourages you to get creative about sex and about intimacy. Even if you, for example, decide to do a period of time where you are not having what most of us would think of as sex, that you would still want to, if these things aren't triggering for you, focus on sensual things, whether that's cuddling, kissing, taking a bath together, taking a shower together. It gave the idea of discussing fantasies that you would like to fulfill once you are back in a place to be interested and feel safe having sex again. Basically, that a lot of times when sex is off the table, it starts to take other things off the table as well, and it encourages kind of stepping back from that. It also mentions that whether it's day to day or for like a certain phase of your life or whatever it may be, some survivors may be okay with either receiving or giving pleasure, but may not be able to do the opposite. It encourages you to talk to your partner about trying to engage in the things that are less triggering for you and that can bring you joy and connection and whatever goodness you and your partner can find together. That one specific example it gave that I thought was quite creative, I guess, was that if you don't want to touch or be touched, that mutual self-pleasure or like reading erotica together, that there are still sometimes, of course it's going to depend on the individual people, things that can be non-triggering and enjoyable, and that like just because something isn't like typical doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with that. And so like get creative, look for any pockets of anything that don't trigger you, and that can be enjoyable and connecting, intimate, etc. This section is really big. It has a lot of information in it that I thought was worth sharing. So I will do a part 2. Follow me so you don't miss it.